Welcome back, everyone. Today we're taking a deep dive into a concept that might just revolutionize how you deal with stress and even relationships. It's called the let them theory.
Intriguing title, right?
It really is. So this idea comes from Mel Robbins' book. Basically, it's all about regaining personal power by letting go of things you can't control and focusing on what you can influence.
It sounds simple, but like most profound ideas, it's incredibly powerful when you put it into practice.
Exactly. We'll be using Robbins' book as our guide. I have to say, it's filled with insightful stories and practical advice. I was particularly fascinated by how she came across this theory. It all began with her son's prom night.
Oh, prom night, a recipe for parental stress, right?
It can be, for sure.
Yeah.
In Robin's case, it was pouring rain. They couldn't get dinner reservations. Imagine the chaos.
I can only imagine. And I bet the parents, Robbins included, were trying to fix everything.
Oh, absolutely. She admits she was trying to control every little detail. But guess what? It all backfired.
So the more she tried to control things, the worse it got. That's a familiar feeling.
Right. But then she had this realization. It was only when she surrendered, when she accepted the situation, that she found peace. And ironically, the evening turned out better than expected.
It's amazing how often that happens. When we let go of our need to control, things often work out better.
It's counterintuitive, isn't it? But that's the core of the let them theory. Finding true power in recognizing our limits and focusing on what we can influence our own thoughts, actions, and reactions.
That's where the dynamic duo of let them and let me comes in, right?
Exactly. Let them is about accepting things. We can't change other people's choices, external circumstances. We essentially acknowledge those things outside our control.
It's not about suppressing your feelings, though.
Right. It's more about accepting reality and making space to take action in your own life.
That's the let me part. So it's not passive at all. It's actually about empowering yourself to take intentional steps.
So how does this let them and let me dance actually work? Could you give us an example?
Absolutely. Robbins tells the story about a weekend when her friends went on a trip without her. Naturally, she felt a little left out, maybe even a little jealous.
Oh, I can relate to that feeling.
We all can. But instead of dwelling on those negative emotions, she did something interesting. She didn't try to guilt her friends or change the situation. She mentally said, let them enjoy their trip.
Okay, so she accepted that her friends were having fun without her. She acknowledged her feelings, but didn't let them control her. So what did she do with that space, that freedom to act?
That's where let me came in. She planned her own fun weekend. She did things she enjoyed and connected with other friends.
So let them is about acceptance and creating space for let me, which is about empowering yourself to take action and shape your experience. It's brilliant.
It really is. And it applies to everyday annoyances, too. Think about standing in a ridiculously long checkout line. We've all been there.
It's a recipe for frustration, for sure.
Robbins actually shares an anecdote about this exact scenario. She says instead of getting annoyed, she practiced let them.
So she acknowledged the slow line. Maybe even considered the cashier might be having a bad day.
Exactly. It wasn't about magically speeding up the line. It was about managing her internal reaction. She didn't let the situation dictate her emotional state.
Then she used the extra time, productively caught up on emails or listened to a podcast. So instead of being frustrated, she made the most of the situation.
It's not denying reality. It's about choosing how you respond, about taking back control.
Right. And this ties in perfectly with what Robbins highlights about stress. Our brains kind of freak out when we feel threatened.
Absolutely. She actually quotes an expert, Dr. Didiner Urkar, who explains how stress throws us into survival mode. It's like our rational brain takes a back seat.
We make impulsive decisions, we say things we regret, we get upset over things that wouldn't normally bother us.
Exactly. So how does the let them theory help in those moments?
Let me provides those tools to break free from the stress cycle. Things like deep breathing, which actually calms our nervous system.
Taking those deep breaths really helps. It sends a signal to your brain that you're safe.
Combine that with the let them mindset, letting go of trying to control what you can't, and suddenly you're much better equipped to handle stress.
It's about realizing we have a choice in how we respond, even when things feel out of control. And this theory is incredibly relevant in the workplace, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. Think about feeling stuck in your current role, overlooked for a promotion, or dealing with a less than inspiring boss. Robbins addresses all of this.
She actually uses the example of a difficult boss named Steve. She tells us to mentally let them continue their behavior, but to focus on our let me actions.
So in this case, let them would be acknowledging that we can't control our boss's actions. And then let me would be.
It might be updating your resume, seeking out new opportunities, or focusing on your professional development.
It's about realizing you're not trapped, that you always have choices.
Exactly. It's reclaiming your agency, your power to make changes.
And this concept, this let them and let me, is incredibly relevant to social media too, isn't it? I mean, Robbins herself admitted to struggling with promoting her work online. For 2 whole years, she avoided posting about her business.
It's hard to imagine, right? She's so successful now, but she was terrified of judgment, consumed by what others might think.
It's a great reminder that even those who seem confident and successful face these insecurities, especially with social media. So how did she get over that fear?
She had this realization she couldn't control what people thought. It was pointless to worry about it. She chose to let them have their opinions.
So she let go of trying to manage other people's perceptions. That must have been incredibly freeing.
It was. And it allowed her to focus on what she could control. Her message, her content, her let me was creating and sharing what felt authentic to her, regardless of whether everyone approved.
It's a powerful lesson in self-expression. True freedom lies in letting go of that need for validation.
Right. And it brings us to an area where the let them theory can be incredibly helpful. Family relationships. These relationships can be so complicated. There's history, expectations, and sometimes those good old-fashioned power struggles.
Family dynamics are a whole other deep dive waiting to happen. So how does this apply to families?
Robbins reminds us that these relationships often come with ingrained opinions and expectations. It's why let them is so crucial here. It creates space for everyone to have their feeling.
It's about accepting that you can't force family members to change, even when you wish you could.
Precisely. It's respecting their autonomy even if you disagree with their choices. She particularly highlights the importance of this with blended families.
That makes sense. Blended families have unique challenges. It's important for everyone to feel heard and understood.
Absolutely. Understanding and acceptance are paramount. Let them experience their feelings, whether it's anger, sadness, or confusion, without judgment.
So you create an environment where everyone feels safe to express themselves.
Right. It's about fostering compassion and understanding, even when things are tough. And Robbins introduces a fantastic tool to complement the let them theory, a concept her friend Lisa Bilyeu calls frame of reference.
Frame of reference. I like the sound of that. What exactly is it?
It's about making a conscious effort to understand another person's perspective, to see the world through their eyes, even if you don't agree with them.
So even if you don't condone someone's behavior, you can still try to understand where they're coming from.
Precisely. Our experiences shape our perceptions, and Robbins illustrates this beautifully with a personal story about her mother. Apparently, her mom initially disapproved of her husband, Chris.
It's got to be tough.
Yeah.
It's natural to feel hurt when someone you love doesn't approve of your partner.
Absolutely. But she tried to understand her mother's frame of reference. Her mom's disapproval stemmed from fear of losing her daughter, fear of the unknown.
It's a reminder that even negative reactions often come from a place of love, even if they're expressed in hurtful ways.
Right. And while it didn't change her mother's opinion overnight, understanding her perspective shifted their dynamic. They were able to connect on a deeper level, despite their differences.
That's a powerful reminder. Understanding doesn't mean condoning. It simply means acknowledging the validity of someone's experience. And this idea of letting go, of embracing different perspectives, is crucial for navigating friendships, particularly as adults.
Oh, absolutely. Robbins talks about the great scattering, how friendships evolve and sometimes drift as we enter adulthood.
It's true. Lives change, priorities shift, and friendships naturally evolve.
Yep.
It's not that we intentionally abandon old friends, but adult friendships often require a different approach.
Exactly. She points to 3 key factors: proximity, timing, and energy. All of these play a huge role in maintaining those connections.
So proximity being physically close. We tend to bond with people we see regularly. Neighbors, colleagues, parents at our kids' school. It's about shared experiences and consistent interactions.
She even mentions research suggesting we need around 200 hours of FaceTime with someone to truly connect.
Wow, 200 hours. It puts those casual coffee dates or chats on the porch into perspective. Those seemingly small interactions build the foundation for deeper bonds.
They do. And then there's timing. Being in similar life stages, dealing with careers, relationships, maybe starting families can strengthen friendships. When our lives are out of sync, it can be harder to relate.
Right. It's not that friendships in different life stages can't work. They might just require a little more effort and understanding.
Exactly. And finally, energy. Robbins stresses that our internal state, our mood, energy levels, even our unspoken thoughts impacts our interactions.
It makes sense. If you're feeling depleted or resentful, it's hard to be a supportive friend. It's about recognizing how our internal world affects our external relationships. And speaking of taking responsibility, Robbins offers some great advice for a very common adult challenge, making new friends. She actually shares her own experience of feeling lonely after moving to a new town at 54. Making new friends at that age felt almost impossible.
It can feel daunting, for sure, especially when you're starting from scratch. So how did she overcome that feeling of isolation?
Instead of waiting for others to reach out, she embraced the "let me" philosophy.
She took action. What did that look like for her?
She started small, introducing herself to people at the gym, at the coffee shop, even at her son's soccer games. She accepted invitations, even if they felt awkward. And she made an effort to initiate plans, even if it felt vulnerable.
So she really put herself out there. That takes courage.
It does.
Mm-hmm.
But she emphasizes that waiting for others to make the first move rarely yields those connections we crave. We often need to be the ones to initiate.
It's that habit of going first. Sometimes that's all it takes to spark connection.
Right. It might feel uncomfortable at first, but it can be the catalyst for building a genuine friendship.
And of course, building a strong network doesn't happen overnight. She advises to give it time, maybe even a year, to cultivate those relationships. It takes patience, persistence, and nurturing those connections over time.
It's a good reminder. And speaking of effort and intention, Robbins addresses another challenge many of us face, wanting to change the people we love. We see them struggling, making choices that seem self-destructive. We just know they'd be happier if they just listened to us.
We've all been there. It's that instinct to protect those we care about, to steer them towards what we think is best for them.
Exactly. But as Robbins points out, this often backfires, creating more resistance and resentment.
It's that human need for control. When we feel pressured, our instinct is to rebel, even if it's against our own best interests. So what's the alternative? How can we support our loved ones without trying to control them?
That's what we'll explore in the next part of our deep dive.
Robbins suggests a more subtle approach, one that's all about understanding, acceptance, and influence. We can't control their actions, but we can nudge them in the right direction.
So it's about inspiring change without forcing it. What does that look like in practice?
One of the most powerful techniques, she says, is modeling the behavior we want to see. If we're advocating for healthy habits, we need to embody those ourselves.
It's that whole actions speak louder than words thing. Leading by example.
Precisely. It's not about being preachy. It's about showing the positive impact through your own actions.
So instead of lecturing about exercise, you lace up your shoes and hit the gym. Or instead of complaining about your partner's unhealthy diet, you cook nutritious meals.
Exactly. It's far more persuasive than any lecture because you're providing a living example of the benefits.
It's about inspiring, not dictating. And along with modeling, what other strategies does she recommend?
Positive reinforcement is key. Instead of criticizing mistakes, we celebrate their efforts, no matter how small.
It's about acknowledging their progress, cheering them on, reminding them that we believe in them.
Right. She actually references research showing that positive reinforcement is far more effective than punishment or criticism. Even small steps deserve recognition.
It makes sense. When we feel supported, we're more likely to keep going even when it's tough.
Absolutely. And Robbins introduces a really helpful framework for these conversations, the ABC loop.
ABC loop. I love a good acronym. Break it down for me.
It stands for apologize, back off, celebrate. It's a 3-step process that shifts the dynamic from pressure to encouragement.
Okay, let's start with A. Apologize. What are we apologizing for exactly?
We're acknowledging that maybe our past attempts to influence haven't been the best. Maybe we were too pushy or controlling.
So taking ownership of our part in the dynamic.
Exactly. It sets a tone of humility and respect. We don't have all the answers, and the other person has the right to make their own choices.
It creates a foundation for a more collaborative conversation. And then B, back off. This sounds crucial, especially when we're talking about controlling behavior.
It's about letting go of the need to control the outcome. Give the other person space.
We resist the urge to nag or lecture. We give them the freedom to make their own decisions.
Exactly. It takes trust, believing they can figure things out, even if it's not the path we would choose for them.
It's about shifting from control to support. And finally, C, celebrate.
We celebrate their efforts, no matter how small. Robbins emphasizes positive reinforcement again. Celebrating those small wins fuels motivation and builds self-belief.
It's about focusing on the positive, on their progress, not their missteps.
And it really works. Even small gestures of appreciation can boost motivation and make us want to keep going.
So it's those little celebrations of effort that can make a big difference.
They really can. Now, switching gears a bit, another area Robbins dives into is dealing with comparisons. We all do it, right? We compare ourselves to others, their accomplishments, their possessions, and it can make us feel so inadequate.
Ugh, comparisons, they're the worst. It's so easy to get caught in that trap, especially with social media constantly showing us these curated, perfect lives.
It's true. But Robbins argues that it's not the comparison itself that's the problem, it's how we respond to it. She says there are two types of comparisons: those that torture us and those that teach us.
Self-torture versus teachers. That's a great way to put it. Explain that a bit more.
Self-torture comparisons focus on things we can't control. Someone else's appearance, their natural talents, things like that. We obsess over these things and it just makes us miserable.
It's setting ourselves up for failure.
Right. But then there are those comparisons that can actually be beneficial. They can teach us something.
So instead of feeling threatened by someone else's success, we can analyze it. What do they do? What can we learn from their journey?
Exactly. It's about shifting from a scarcity mindset, thinking there's not enough success to go around, to an abundance mentality.
Realizing that someone else's achievements don't diminish our own potential. They can actually show us different paths to success.
Yes. And Robbins encourages us to use those comparisons as fuel, as inspiration to take action and pursue our own goals.
Turning envy into inspiration. That's a brilliant reframing. And it reminds me of another challenge Robbins tackles in her book: our tendency to try to control others. This seems especially relevant in relationships.
You're absolutely right. She spends a lot of time on this, arguing that trying to control others, even with the best intentions, often backfires. It's seductive, that belief that if we could just orchestrate everything perfectly, everyone would be happy.
It's wanting to protect our loved ones from pain or disappointment. But as you said, it usually leads to more problems than it solves.
We expend so much energy trying to bend the world to our will, but we have very little control over other people's choices. It's a recipe for frustration and resentment.
And Robbins gives a great example of this. We want our loved ones to change for the better. We want them to take care of their health, make different career choices, maybe even leave a relationship that seems unhealthy.
We think we're helping, but our attempts to control their choices actually damage the relationship.
When we pressure or guilt trip them, it only triggers their need for autonomy. It pushes them away.
Exactly. It's that road to hell is paved with good intentions scenario. We think we're doing the right thing, but we're actually creating more problems.
So if pressure doesn't work, what does? How do we support our loved ones without trying to control them?
That's a great question, and it's something we'll delve into further after a quick break.
Go, be right back.
It all comes back to understanding, acceptance, and influence. We can't force change, but we can encourage it. Remember those techniques we discussed earlier, modeling, positive reinforcement? Those are incredibly powerful tools.
So leading by example and focusing on the positive. What else does Robbins suggest?
She introduces this really interesting technique called the 5 whys.
5 whys. Okay, I'm intrigued. Tell me more.
It's a simple yet effective exercise. It's about asking yourself why 5 times in a row, digging deeper each time to understand your emotional response.
So let's say I'm frustrated by a loved one's unhealthy eating habits. Would I start by asking myself, why does this bother me so much?
Exactly. And maybe your first answer is, because I'm worried about their health. But then you dig deeper. Why does their health concern me so much?
And maybe the next layer reveals something deeper, like because I'm afraid of losing them.
Precisely. As you keep asking why, you often uncover those deeper emotions, fears, insecurities, even past traumas that might be fueling your need to control the situation.
It's about realizing that our reactions often go deeper than the surface level behavior we're trying to change.
And it can be incredibly freeing. It shifts the focus from trying to control the other person to understanding and managing your own emotional response.
So we move from external control to internal awareness. It's a powerful shift in perspective.
It is. And it allows us to approach conversations about change from a more empathetic and compassionate place.
Which brings us back to the ABC loop. It seems even more effective when we have that self-awareness.
Absolutely. We can let go of that need to be right. We can listen with genuine curiosity, ask open-ended questions, and really try to understand their perspective.
It's creating that safe space for an honest conversation where both people feel heard and respected.
And Robbins stresses that this shift in communication is key for building healthier dynamics in relationships. It's about moving away from judgment and blame towards understanding and support.
And remembering that lasting change has to come from within. We can't force it on anyone.
Right. It's about empowering them to make their own choices, even if those choices aren't what we would choose for them. It's about letting go.
And that idea of letting go extends to our relationship with ourselves, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. Self-acceptance is so crucial. Robbins talks about it extensively in her book. It's about recognizing that we're all works in progress, perfectly imperfect.
We need to be kinder to ourselves, embrace those imperfections.
Exactly. Treat yourself with the same kindness and understanding you would offer a close friend. Celebrate your strengths and acknowledge your weaknesses.
Instead of beating ourselves up for our mistakes, we need to see them as opportunities to learn and grow.
And remember, self-acceptance isn't about complacency. It's about creating a foundation of self-love from which you can grow and reach your full potential.
It's about silencing that inner critic and embracing who you truly are.
Right. And that internal shift has a ripple effect. It improves our well-being and influences the quality of our relationships.
So when we have a positive relationship with ourselves, it positively impacts our connections with others.
Precisely. And this brings us to another critical aspect of healthy relationships. Boundaries.
Boundaries. Those invisible lines that protect our time, energy, and sanity. They're so important.
They are, and they're not about being selfish or isolating ourselves. Boundaries are about creating sustainable and respectful dynamics.
So it's recognizing our limits, communicating them clearly, and respecting the boundaries of others.
Exactly. Robbins provides great advice on how to set those boundaries. Identify your non-negotiables, communicate them assertively, and most importantly, uphold them consistently.
We have the right to say no without guilt or apology. It's about prioritizing our well-being.
And that brings us to another crucial element in any relationship: navigating disagreements and conflicts. Robbins emphasizes that it's not about avoiding conflict, it's about managing it effectively.
Conflicts are inevitable, right?
Yeah.
But they don't have to be destructive.
Exactly. She argues that when approached constructively, conflicts can actually strengthen relationships. It's about seeing them as opportunities to understand each other better.
So instead of viewing conflict as a battle to be won, we see it as a chance to learn and grow together.
Right. Active listening is key. Truly understanding the other person's perspective before defending your own.
Putting yourself in their shoes, validating their feelings, even if you don't agree.
And of course, expressing your own needs and desires in a clear and respectful way.
So finding that balance between honesty and compassion.
Exactly. Robbins offers practical tips for these tough conversations. Use I statements. Focus on the behavior, not the person. Avoid blame and accusations.
It's about approaching the conversation from a place of vulnerability and understanding.
And seeking common ground, finding solutions that work for both people. She believes that a win-win outcome is always possible.
It's a shift in mindset. We move away from that adversarial approach towards collaboration and understanding.
And one of the most important things to let go of in any conflict: the need to be right.
The ego. That voice that insists on being right, even if it damages the relationship.
It's often rooted in insecurity. We cling to our perspectives because we're afraid of appearing wrong or inadequate.
But that need to be right often creates a lose-lose situation. Someone always ends up feeling hurt or defeated.
Exactly. Robbins encourages us to challenge that need to be right. She says it's far more rewarding to focus on understanding and harmony.
So it's about choosing connection over being right.
And that brings us to another powerful concept: forgiveness.
Forgiveness is such a loaded word. It's not about condoning harmful actions. It's about letting go of the resentment and pain.
Precisely. Robbins stresses that forgiveness is a gift you give yourself. It frees you from carrying that burden.
It's about choosing to move forward with compassion and understanding for both yourself and the person who hurt you.
And sometimes letting go also means accepting that not all relationships are meant to last forever.
Endings are tough. They're painful. But sometimes they're necessary for growth.
Right. Robbins emphasizes that sometimes the most loving thing you can do is let go of a relationship that no longer serves you.
It's acknowledging that sometimes paths diverge, and it's okay to grieve that loss. It doesn't diminish the love or the lessons learned.
And she reminds us that endings often create space for new beginnings, new relationships, new experiences. It's all part of life's journey.
And speaking of journeys, Robbins talks a lot about the importance of gratitude.
Gratitude is such a powerful force. It's not about ignoring challenges or pretending everything is perfect. It's about choosing to focus on the good.
Shifting our perspective from what we lack to what we have.
Exactly. And there are simple ways to cultivate gratitude. Keeping a gratitude journal, expressing appreciation in loved ones, really savoring those simple pleasures in life.
It's about training our minds to notice and appreciate all the good things, big and small.
And that gratitude spills over into our relationships. It makes us more joyful, generous, and compassionate.
It makes us better partners, friends, and family members. And Robbins highlights another crucial element for nurturing those connections, being present.
Ah, true presence. It's become so rare in this age of constant distraction, but it's so important for building meaningful relationships.
It's putting away the phones, turning off the TV, and really being there with the person in front of you, giving them your full attention.
Exactly. And Robbins suggests simple things we can do. Make eye contact, listen attentively, truly engage in the conversation.
It's about making a conscious effort to be present in that moment. It's a gift we can give to others.
It conveys respect, care, and appreciation. And those small gestures can make a big difference in how we connect with the people we love.
It's those little things that often mean the most. And speaking of connections, Robbins spends a lot of time discussing communication. It's the foundation of any healthy relationship.
Absolutely. And she emphasizes that effective communication isn't just about getting your point across. It's about creating an environment where both people feel heard and understood.
It's about listening with our hearts, not just our ears, trying to really understand their perspective.
She offers some great tips for communicating more effectively. Use I statements. Focus on the behavior, not the person. Avoid blame and accusations.
So it's about expressing yourself honestly, but with compassion and understanding.
Exactly. And when it comes to those difficult conversations, she recommends choosing the right time and place, preparing what you want to say, and focusing on your needs and feelings without judgment.
It's about approaching those conversations with a collaborative mindset, looking for solutions that work for both people.
Right. And even amidst disagreements, remember to maintain respect and understanding. It's possible to have different viewpoints while still maintaining a strong connection.
It's that reminder that relationships are complex, but they're worth the effort.
And Robbins introduces this incredibly powerful concept, vulnerability.
Vulnerability. It's often seen as a weakness, but Robbins argues it's the key to true intimacy and connection.
It's about letting go of the need to appear perfect. It's about showing your true self, imperfections and all.
It's scary, but it's also incredibly freeing.
It is, and it allows for a deeper level of connection.
She suggests starting small. Share something personal with a trusted friend. Gradually expand your comfort zone.
It's about realizing that vulnerability is actually a strength. It allows for more authentic and fulfilling relationships.
And speaking of authenticity, Robbins also talks about the importance of letting go of unrealistic expectations.
Oh, expectations, they can be such a source of disappointment.
We create these idealized images in our minds of how things should be, but life rarely follows the script.
Right, and those unmet expectations lead to hurt, frustration, and resentment.
So it's about recognizing that people are imperfect, relationships are messy, and life is unpredictable.
And instead of clinging to those rigid expectations, we need to embrace flexibility and acceptance.
So letting go of the need to control everything and finding joy in the unexpected.
It's about embracing the beauty of imperfection, and it all ties in so perfectly with self-love, wouldn't you say?
Self-love. It's such a crucial foundation for everything, for our well-being, for our relationships.
It's about recognizing your inherent worthiness, honoring your needs, and treating yourself with kindness and respect.
It's about silencing that inner critic and embracing all that you are.
And Robbins offers great tips for cultivating self-love. Positive self-talk, engaging in activities you enjoy, setting those healthy boundaries we talked about earlier.
It's treating yourself with the same care and compassion you would offer to someone you love.
And when you have that strong foundation of self-love, it impacts everything. It attracts healthier relationships, creates a more positive environment.
And it makes it easier to let go of the past, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. The past can hold us back if we let it. Robbins encourages us to acknowledge those past hurts, process them, and then choose to move forward.
It's about understanding that we can't change the past, but we can choose how it defines us.
Right. And forgiveness is a big part of that. It's not about condoning what happened. It's about freeing yourself from that burden. It's about choosing peace.
And Robbins talks about another powerful concept, living in alignment with our values.
Our values are like our compass. They guide us, give us direction.
And when we live in accordance with our values, It brings a sense of purpose and fulfillment.
Robbins encourages us to identify our core values and make choices that reflect them.
So it's about living intentionally, making decisions that feel right, that align with who you truly are.
And that internal alignment has a positive impact on our relationships too. It attracts people who share our values.
So we create a foundation built on respect and understanding. And Robbins reminds us to appreciate and celebrate our differences.
Our differences are what make us unique. Embracing diversity, both in our personal lives and in the world, is so important. It's how we learn and grow.
It's recognizing that there's no one right way to be.
Exactly. It's about opening our minds to different perspectives and experiences.
And it's all connected to the idea of cultivating a growth mindset.
The growth mindset. It's that belief that we can learn and grow throughout our lives.
That our abilities aren't fixed, we can always improve.
Exactly. It's about embracing challenges, seeking feedback, and persevering even when things get tough.
So viewing mistakes as opportunities to learn, not as failures.
And this growth mindset has a ripple effect on those around us. It creates an environment that encourages learning and growth.
And it brings us to another crucial aspect of relationships, prioritizing connection over convenience.
In today's busy world, true connection is often sacrificed for efficiency. But those meaningful interactions are essential for our well-being and happiness.
So it's about resisting that urge to prioritize efficiency over everything else.
Exactly. Robbins encourages us to make time for those face-to-face conversations, those shared experiences that truly nourish our souls.
Put down the phones, turn off the TV, and truly connect.
It doesn't have to be elaborate. It's about the intention, the presence, the desire to connect on a deeper level.
And that applies to our relationship with ourselves too, doesn't it? That whole idea of self-care.
Self-care is so important. It's not selfish, it's essential.
It's about prioritizing our well-being, making those choices that nourish our minds, bodies, and souls.
Exactly. And it's not about expensive spa days or elaborate retreats. It's about those small, everyday choices.
Getting enough sleep, eating healthy, moving our bodies, spending time in nature, whatever brings us joy and restores our energy.
It's about filling our own cups so we can show up for others. And this ties back to that idea of authenticity we talked about earlier.
Being true to ourselves, living in alignment with our values. It's about shedding those masks we wear for others and letting our true selves shine.
And Robbins encourages us to cultivate authenticity by exploring our passions, expressing ourselves creatively, and living in a way that feels true to who we are.
It's about honoring our unique individuality.
And that authenticity has a ripple effect. It inspires those around us to do the same. It creates a more genuine and fulfilling world.
And Robbins concludes her book with a powerful call to action: to embrace the let me era.
It's a paradigm shift. It's about letting go of control, judgment, and people-pleasing, and embracing self-acceptance, empowerment, and intentional action.
It's recognizing that we have the power to shape our experiences, to create our own happiness, and to build relationships that are truly fulfilling.
And she reminds us that this is a journey, not a destination. It takes effort and a willingness to confront our old patterns.
But the rewards are worth it. A life filled with more joy, connection, and meaning.
Absolutely. It's about embracing the beauty of being human.
Well, that wraps up our deep dive into Mel Robbins' The Let Them Theory. It's been an incredible journey filled with insights and practical tools we can all use to improve our lives and our relationships.
And as always, we encourage you to continue exploring these concepts. Think about how you can apply the let them theory to your own life. What are you trying to control that's outside your sphere of influence? What would happen if you let go?
It's a powerful question to ponder. And until next time, keep exploring, keep growing, and keep embracing the extraordinary power of letting go.